What's up, RotoGrinders? Welcome to another edition of FanDuel Friday. I am your host, TJ Zwarych, and I'm ready to talk some NBA with my co-host today and my friend, Justin Carlucci. LeLuuch, how you doing, my friend?
Good, TJ. Another Friday, breaking down another fun, huge slate. A lot of low ownership with some of these studs up top because it's such a big slate. A lot of question marks, a lot of things we don't know about yet, but let's talk about some things that we do know about.
Yeah, let's do it. I think kind of as per usual, we're going to talk about strategy. We're going to talk about some stacks, talk about the slate as a whole, as opposed to going position by position here, especially because we are still waiting on a ton of news. And so let's start with a bit of the news we're waiting for, just to get that out of the way. We still have a Miles Turner questionable in the first game, Porzingis questionable in the first game. Donovan Mitchell didn't attend shoot around today, and he's questionable with the leg injury. Markkanen and Conley are still questionable for Utah. And then we got a bunch of guys out here as well. And so a bunch of stuff we are still waiting on. And the biggest thing that stood out to both of us as we were looking kind of here is we have a lot of studs coming in at single digit ownership. So we'll talk some strategy as to how we can get to those guys. But before that, let's start with some of these early games, because Washington and Indiana is going to be one we're going to want to be getting a lot of exposure to. Bradley Beal is already out. Kristaps Porzingis is questionable. Will Barton is questionable. Monty Morris, Denny Avdia, and Kyle Kuzma are going to look really, really good regardless. And then if all of a sudden you get Porzingis out, Daniel Gafford becomes an interesting option. If Barton's out, Goodwin becomes an interesting option. And so we're going to have to wait and see for those guys. And on the other side here, we have Isaiah Jackson and Miles Turner questionable. And so I don't think there's a lot of point discussing this news in advance here, because we're going to know this before lock. I'll be breaking this down with Dean on Grinders Live today. We'll be talking about it on Crunch Time as well. And so we'll know this before lock. We don't got to spend too much time on it. If more guys are out here, this becomes an even better spot than it already is. One of the most interesting tournament plays right now is looking like Tyrese Halliburton coming in at 6% ownership with the heavily owned Washington players on the other side. And like, if we get Turner and Jackson out, Jalen Smith is just going to be an absolute smash, as well as O'Shea Brissett.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. The only thing I can say for sure, and it's still a hypothetical, is if we get Porzingis out in addition to Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma probably becomes a top 3 per dollar play on the slate, and a cash game must with that increased usage in that role he'd have against a Pacers team who plays fast and don't really play much defense.
100%. And then also in these early games, we have New York and Charlotte. It's a 3-point spread. Julius Randle's coming off a absolute smash game. Charlotte's terrible against big men, so like this kind of whole Knicks team is pretty interesting, especially Randle, Barrett, Robinson, and even a guy like Emmanuel Quickly, until we get some news, is looking like a decent value today. And then on the Charlotte side, we're looking at some good point per dollar options as well, with Hayward and such still out. Oubre, Rozier, Washington, Plumlee, McDaniels. Because of the amount of games we have on this slate, I kind of feel like I want to make sure I'd be getting some runbacks in these games. Like, I'd want to be playing some Rozier and Randle, some Rozier and Robinson, and then in the first game, Kuzma with somebody on Indiana, as opposed to just mixing and matching blotches from these early games, because there's so much late goodness that we're still looking at. Orlando could have some value with the injuries they've had. Mo Wagner has just been absolutely bonkers lately. We stay at these 7:30 games. We got LA and Philly. It's a high total. It's a close spread. AD, LeBron back facing Embiid and Harden. With all these players in, this kind of feels like one I don't know how interested I'm in, just because of the prices. But if I'm running MMEs, I'm definitely going to have interest in AD and LeBron getting more than the 3% ownership that we're currently projecting them for. And same with Embiid. I want to get to him for more than 5%. But the team I want to spend time talking to you lots about, Luuch, here is the Atlanta Hawks facing the Brooklyn Nets, because DeJounte Murray is out. DeAndre Hunter is questionable. And without Murray, that opens up so much for this team. Trae Young is going to be the top stud spend up on the slate. He's probably one of the first players you're plugging into cash games today as it stands right now. If all of a sudden you get DeAndre Hunter as well, this really opens up this team, because with no Murray, it makes AJ Griffin and Bogdan Bogdanovic already very interesting. But if all of a sudden you get DeAndre Hunter out here too, Jarrett Culver and Jalen Johnson, as well as even somebody like Aaron Holiday, all of a sudden become a lot more interesting here as well. We also have no John Collins in this one, solidifies some minutes for Clint Capella. How are you prioritizing this Hawks game?
Yeah, Trae Young is a great optimal play. He burnt a lot of people 2 days ago in that Knicks game when Atlanta just got throttled. You just have to throw that game out. Brooklyn is a little bit better of a matchup, and hopefully Trae Young can keep this thing close. The shot volume has been good all season. I wouldn't be surprised to see him shoot 25 plus times tonight. Capella's been playing some fantastic basketball, and Nets bigs are an area we've attacked for well over a year now. The 65-ish, 62-ish price tag on FanDuel and 65 on DK. You don't feel great about the upside, but we know he has 50-point upside if he blocks a few shots, and he's really producing on a per-minute base, especially without John Collins and some of these other sidecar pieces you talked about. The big question is for me, are we finally going to see Bogdanovic play like 27 to 28 minutes? We're probably not going to get any news whether or not that leash will be lengthened. It just doesn't work like that. He's played 22, 22, and 24 minutes respectively, I believe. So I don't know. I'm hesitant to play him if just because, if he only plays 22 to 24 minutes, I'm not excited to play him on an 11-game slate. But if there's a chance, if you think your glass is half full and he plays 27, 28 minutes, something like that, I think you have to have him in the player pool for sure.
That is, as it stands with the value we have right now, he's somebody I'd look to in cash games, just because even if you pull up his game log, 24 minutes last game, we're projecting him for 26 today. He shot like crap, but he still took 16 shots in those 24 minutes after DeJounte kind of went down. So he's going to be lighting it up with the second unit. So hopefully the shots go in. I think he's a strong cash game play. Because of the minutes cap, I don't know how strong the upside is for tournaments. And so, especially if we get Hunter out, it'd make me very interested in guys like Jalen Johnson, AJ Griffin. I already have interest in AJ Griffin at that low ownership right now. But flipping to the other side of this game, this is one of the most interesting ones to do a little stack for me, going some Trae Young, Clint Capella, especially with Capella's like a cash game style play. As a last piece in your lineup, Kyrie Irving on the other side coming in at 10% ownership after his biggest game of the year is very interesting at 8,500. Still priced at a point that he has a huge upside. Like as long as he's below 10K, he's got upside. And then even Kevin Durant on the other side, he'll be tougher to get to because simply just because we don't have a ton of value yet. But even with Ben Simmons potentially coming back here, like I still like Kyrie in this spot.
I typically separate two studs on the same team because usually we don't see two of them have ceiling games together. But Kyrie is not even 9K, and the Nets and the way this team is built is such an anomaly that I do think there is an outcome. And even though it's unlikely, that Irving and Durant can still both get where they need to be in the right game script together. But that's a lot of salary to use. And of course, you're going to want an Atlanta piece if you're going to use Irving and Durant. Now, I'm not coming on here and advocating to play Irving and Durant together everywhere, but I don't mind having a couple lineups with them together in case this game goes absolutely nuclear. They're just two high usage guys. They take a majority of the field goal attempts on this team between the two of them that, until Irving's, priced accordingly up to like 9,500. I don't know if I want to build rule separating them in all of my lineups, but definitely at least half of them.
Couple what if situations I'm going to touch on quick, just real swiftly. De'Aaron Fox, Terrence Davis, both questionable today for Sacramento. If they're out, Davion Mitchell and Malik Monk become very, very strong values. And then on the Cleveland side, Donovan Mitchell is questionable with a leg injury. He did not participate in shoot around. If he is out, Darius Garland is going to be a cash game lock, one of the best point per dollar mid-range plays on the slate. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are looking pretty decent there as well, with no Kevin Love in this one today. if we get a bunch of guys out, yeah, sure, maybe you can look at the Stevens and the Osmonds and the Leverts, but I don't really know how much that'll be for me. Maybe a little bit of Karis Levert. Memphis, we got Steven Adams out. If he's out, that opens the door for a bigger boost to block more shots for Jaren Jackson, and it opens up more minutes for Santi Aldama and Brandon Clark as value plays. New Orleans and Philly, it's a very close spread. CJ McCollum is a tournament player that I'm just waiting to blow up. He's been crap since he came back from injury, but I'm just waiting for a game that he could have a big one. And I think on Zion is interesting, as well as Devin Booker on the other side, with Chris Paul still on somewhat of a minutes limit. Talked about the Minnesota and Utah game being just a great game environment. 1.5 point spread. Minnesota still has Towns out, so we have Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert in a revenge spot in Utah. D'Angelo Russell, all looking like great plays. Jalen Noel's even looking like a potential value, as well as Jaden McDaniels and Kyle Anderson being some tournament values as well. Let's focus on the Utah side, though. This is going to be a fast-paced, not a ton of defense game. We got Mike Conley and Lauri Markkanen both questionable for this one. We're not going to know this news before lock, likely. How are you handling this Utah team?
Don't sleep on Walker Kessler if the right news breaks, that's for sure. So we would likely not get this news at lock. Slightly backtracking here, the good news is we should get some Sacramento Cleveland solidifications here, whether it's before lock or like the 7:01 Eastern thing, because that's a 7:30 Eastern game. So definitely, you want some of this early 7 p.m. exposure. I wouldn't go crazy if you're multi-entering, because the games you hinted on have a lot of implications, and there's definitely a way to get an edge by going overweight on some of this late breaking value that could open up, I guess we could call it. So I'm definitely super interested in seeing what happens here with Utah. If we don't get this news with Mike Conley and company, it's going to be extremely interesting how to play this. We have Jordan Clarkson already projected for pushing 30%. And if Conley and Markkanen are in, personally, I don't think he has upside, an 11 game. I mean, okay, he could go off, but he's not my
preference. The thing
is,
though, is there's still no Colin Sexton now, though, that he just got hurt. And so that still is that extra spot for Clarkson, Beasley, or Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I mean, even it's like, is Talen Horton-Tucker out, or are we just not projecting him because he didn't play last game?
Well, he fooled me 2 days ago. I can't lie about it. I was really excited for that spot, and it was Nickeil Alexander-Walker who got the burn. And you know what? Alexander Walker played pretty well too. So I would,
based on all these injuries, if I'm running 150, I would include Alexander Walker and Talen Horton-Tucker in my pool.
I would separate them, though. Would you?
Separate them for sure. I'd make one of Beasley, Horton-Tucker, Walker, and Clarkson. I don't think I'd want to play more than one of these guys, or maybe max 2, but only one of Beasley, Horton-Tucker, and Walker. Horton-Tucker and Walker. Simply because they've been doing this all year. It's one of them. We don't know which one, but it's one of them. This Simone Fontecchio guy was somebody who ended up playing a ton of minutes last game as well. If we click on his game log, I had never seen him on the court before, but all of a sudden he started playing a bunch of minutes last game, 19. I guess he played 21 a few games ago. He was shooting threes. He looked real strong out there. He closed the game in a close game.
I was laughing at Twitter because the people who know Simone Fontecchio are the degenerate DraftKings Olympic basketball DFSers, because he was a staple of some of those lineups. And they were like, who's this, Fonta Cheese guy closing out the game over Horton-Tucker? And although I got fooled by the Horton-Tucker situation, I kind of had to laugh a little bit there. And you know what the thing is, even without Sexton, though, there is low-key a lot of mouths to feed on this Jazz team. Guys who like the ball in their hands, whether it's Clarkson, Conley, Markkanen, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Horton-Tucker are both ball-dominated guards too, TJ. So I don't mind having these guys in the pool. I would just kind of limit let's say these guys most of them are healthy and playing. I would probably set maybe a max of 2 of them in my lineups. Now, if half of them are out tonight, then maybe you could play 3 Jazz in your lineups for sure, based on who's not playing.
It's one of the reasons I'm somewhat tempted to do some backloading here, because if all of a sudden just a ton of Jazz value opens up, Markkanen's out, Conley's out, Fontecchio, Whatever it is, if he's
What?
out, like this just opens up tons and tons of value on this team, and it could be a huge edge on this slate. And so it does make me tempted to get overweight on these New Orleans and Phoenix guys, Minnesota, Utah guys, and even a player like Luka Doncic, just because that would force in a lot of these players in these later games, these values in these later games, just kind of hoping that they play or hoping that these other guys are out. And then if these other guys play, then I can just look to make a more balanced build with a little bit less Luka and plug in these Minnesota guys like someone you just pulled up, a Gobert, an Anthony Edwards, and a D'Angelo Russell.
How do you not love it? No one's going there. Look at his log when he's played at least 30 minutes. He has some serious spike games. And of course, you get the little revenge narrative in as well. We've seen centers just absolutely demolish Utah this season. The Joel Embiid 100 burger was against this Utah team. And if this game is fairly competitive as a tournament player and you see not even a 1% projected ownership there, you got to be licking your chops here, TJ.
Yeah, that's a great play for tournaments today. I think he's going to be one of my favorite tournament centers on the slate today. Before we get out of here, what do you think of this Milwaukee and Dallas situation? Because the late night hammer has the two best point per minute producers in NBA fantasy basketball in Giannis Antetokounmpo and Luka Doncic. And so with that being said, do you want to play either of them? It's a 1 point spread, but Dallas plays good defense and then they play slow. Milwaukee plays a little faster, but they also play really good defense. Luka is looking like the better play of the two of them today because there's less mouths to feed over on Dallas, but he's also going to have Drew Holiday draped to him with Giannis and Brook Lopez protecting the rim here. Do you like anything in this game?
I mean, yeah, a little bit, but I think it's situational. First of all, a DFSer's nightmare, if I'm slightly backtracking, Anthony Edwards has had 3 straight games with at least 5 steals in it. So are we going to, is he going to pay off his tag without, getting 15 to 20 points off steals? I don't know, but his scoring upside's elite. You got to have Anthony Edwards in the pool. Can you build with Giannis and Luka together? Let's just see what that would give you.
I will be getting a lot of either like one of D'Angelo Russell or Anthony Edwards today. Like they kind of take turns who goes off. And so I'm going to be overweight on both of them, but I'm probably going to only play one of them in a lineup.
That's a really good point. I do the same thing. I group them separately.
And then like you can do Luka and Giannis together. And I think kind of one of the ways to do it, just because of the late swappability, is don't do that with the early value, the Markelle Fultzes, Mason Plumlees, and these guys. Like, I think we don't do that. I think we take shots with, I think the strategy for this slate, I think the biggest edge you can get is get overweight on both Giannis and Luka. In your builds, get overweight to these guys. Use the value of Utah. Plan for Markkanen and Conley to be out. And load your lineups with value pieces there. Load your lineups with value pieces from Atlanta. That's after lock. If the value does not go your way, you take Luka and Giannis out of your lineup and you start inserting the Anthony Edwards, Gobert's, D'Angelo Russell's. Mike Conley's playing and he's not on a minutes limit. You run it back with him on the other side. Lauri Markkanen as a run back, like that type of thing. You play the mid-range guys that are in great spots here that aren't going to get very high ownership. You can play Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, and Jonas Valanciunas. Like you go that route, and if the value breaks your way, you stars and scrubs it with stars that nobody's going to be playing today, like Giannis. And then 15% Luka, that's nothing. And then if it doesn't go your way, you swap off of the big studs. You don't do your stars and scrubs approach, and you play the Minnesota-Utah game, the New Orleans-Phoenix game as instead of the Dallas-Milwaukee game.
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily need to try to play Giannis and Luka together on this slate. There are so many studs that have 60+ point upside that we've seen Luka and Giannis be optimal and have ceiling games kind of in a blowout as well. Like we've seen one of them get there because their volume is just insane and the way they produce. Let me ask you this before we head out of here, and then I swear I'm done talking today. What do you think is the most 1 or 2 pieces of integral news? Since we talked about a bunch of different hypotheticals, what are the maybe 2 most important pieces of news that could really shift this slate in your eyes?
I think probably Kristaps Porzingis in that very first game opens up a lot for Washington if he's out, both in the mid-tier and in terms of value pieces. And then the other two big ones I'm looking at, like De'Aaron Fox is super big too, but the other ones, it's like Donovan Mitchell opening up, Darius Garland, and the Cleveland players. And then the other one is just this entire Utah situation of Markkanen and Conley.
If Porzingis does play, I'm not as crazy about playing Denny on FanDuel at that price. I mean, I know the upside's there.
I agree.
But and he's fine. But in order for me to be like, yeah, I really like him, I need Porzingis to sit.
With how much he's been playing more lately, if Porzingis sits, is Gafford become your main tournament and like cash center? Obviously, he looks even spicier on the other side, but like we've seen that ceiling that he. Yeah, we don't mention the name of the other site when we're on the FanDuel Friday show. Hit the like button if you're watching this on YouTube, sponsored by FanDuel. On the other side, he looks spicy, but on FanDuel, I think he still looks very good if all of a sudden Porzingis is out. Like 43-point upside in 23 minutes. If he all of a sudden gets 28, 29 in this spot, he could absolutely smash, especially if all of a sudden Miles Turner's out and that rim protection on the other side looks a lot less interesting and a lot less 3-point shooting, pulling Gafford away from the other hoop. So I think he becomes a very, very interesting play. You sort by minutes here. Every game over 19 minutes has been over 20 fantasy points. I think he would be kind of the best play there, but I'd want to roll out Avdia as well. It would make Goodwin and Kispert more interesting. Kuzma obviously as well.
And I think there might be some sticker shock at 5,300 for a guy we're used to seeing sub 4K. So I don't even think we'd have to worry about his ownership getting absolutely crazy on FanDuel. Now on DraftKings, I'm sorry, the other site, yeah, he would be mega chalk there at that price. There's a huge difference here. And so I'm definitely interested based on the biggest news. I'm with it. And the other piece for me, other than Utah, because a third of the team's questionable, is of course the Donovan Mitchell news, who was not seen at shoot around, and that of course would make some of these other Cavaliers extremely interesting, especially without Kevin Love as well. And you could definitely pencil in Darius Garland to a lot of your optimal builds if Donovan Mitchell does not play. So that's all I got for you, TJ. You got anything else for me?
I think that is basically it. We've covered, I think, everything that we need to cover. Make sure you tune in later as well. We got so much content coming for you today. I'll be on Grinders Live with Dean and Bobby, and then we have the Crunch Time crew coming in after us, and Dre and I will be on for the FanDuel Friday football show as well, breaking down this week's NFL slate. So make sure you tune into all those. We got a lot of great content. Keep your finger to the pulse for the news, and hopefully we helped you with some strategy that can help you take down a tournament tonight. I've been so close in so many sports. NBA, I came second in a single entry the other night. Football last night, I told Roth before the show, I was like, I'm going to take down NFL today. I can feel it. This was before the NBA show. And I was in first place the entire second half until that last Rams touchdown right at the end of the game. So tough, real tough, but we're close, and we've been making some real great plays, and it's going to be happening here soon. I can feel it. So good luck to everyone, and make sure you're tuning in for FanDuel Friday NFL show and Grinders Live and Crunch Time later. We will see you next week. Peace.